These were the sons of Shem, according to their families, according to their languages, in their lands, according to their nations. These were the families of the sons of Noah, according to their generations, in their nations. And from these the nations were divided on the earth after the flood. Genesis chapter 10, verses 31 through 32. The closing section of Genesis chapter 10 summarizes the table of nations. The table of nations in reference to Shem, Ham, and Japheth, the sons of Noah. So Genesis chapter 11 will get down into the specificity and the details of these nations, beginning with the Tower of Babel and the lineage of Ham. But right now, closing out in Genesis chapter 10, we are closing out with the table of nations, the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and their sons, and the nations and the civilizations that were derived from them. Pretty much the ancient Akkadian Mesopotamian Empire, the first civilization. But the phrase divided on the earth after the flood ties directly to Genesis chapter 11, verse 9, when mankind's rebellion at Babel caused God to confuse their language and scatter them. Genesis chapter 11, verse 9. Therefore its name is called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth, and from there the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of all the earth. Thus, Genesis chapter 10 concludes the historical division, while Genesis chapter 11 explains the specific and detailed spiritual reason of that historical division. Behind it, humanity's attempt to unite against heaven's authority, and really builds the foundation and the origin of all that we know today in reference to this false religion, this apostate Protestantism that is preached to every nation, kindred, tongue, and people through the system of religion or man's tradition. So the divine division, a barrier to evil. So by dividing languages and nations, God restrained humanity from repeating the global rebellion of Babel. The whole point of Babel means the gate of heaven or confusion, to reach man's righteousness, man's own works, man's own tradition, to reach heaven and ultimately vulnerate themselves and be God, which is what Catholicism teaches. Catholicism teaches that a man is infallible. The man is vicarious filii Dei, in the place of God. He is God on earth. That's what the Pope claims. So by dividing languages and nations, God restrained humanity from repeating the global rebellion. That global rebellion originated with Nimrod, because Nimrod was the first to vulnerate himself. We're not going to get down into the specificity of Nimrod, Semiramis, and Tammuz, and how Nimrod became essentially the first god, but that's for another video. But sticking to the global rebellion of Babel, this is specified in Acts chapter 17, verse 26. And he has made from one blood every nation of man to dwell on all the face of the earth, and has determined their pre-appointed times and the boundaries of their dwellings. So this act was both judgment and mercy, the act to divide and confuse the languages, because had that not had happened, man would have been essentially God in his mind, or the same mindset that happened in the antediluvian world, which is why Yahweh essentially destroyed the world to begin with, because of the apostasy that derives from that mindset, which originally originated with Lucifer. So Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 8 through 9. When the Most High divided their inheritance to the nations, he set the boundaries of the peoples according to the number of the children of Israel. For the Lord portioned in his people Jacob is the place of his inheritance. So this happened in order for Yahweh to set the foundation of his inheritance, which would happen through Jacob, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but ultimately the 12 sons of Israel. So God's division preserved the remnant. It preserved the remnant, and it set the foundation for this to happen. The remnant lineage, the loipos, through which the Messiah would come, ensuring the promise of redemption remained unbroken. So just as the nations were divided after the flood, the end-time world will again experience a divine separation, which will be the great deception, if possible, would deceive the very elect. But it's not possible. That's why the text says, if possible. So this time, not by language, but by spirit and allegiance. Remember, Yeshua said he is seeking those who worship him in spirit and truth, not essentially with religion. So Revelation chapter 14, verse 6 through 7. Then I saw another angel flying in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach to those who dwell upon the earth, to every nation, tribe, tongue, and people, saying with a loud voice, fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment has come. Why? Because Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. And that wine of the wrath of her fornication is the false doctrines that is taught through the traditions of man, through apostate Protestantism and through Catholicism, which teaches righteousness by works, which is anti-Christ spirit of the Protestant Reformation. The Protestant Reformation was founded upon God's word, sola scriptura, back to the fountain. But according to the Protestant church, the majority of the churches, I would say 90, I'm not going to get down to the specifics of them, but any church that has a creed which says what you can and cannot say according to the traditions of man as opposed to God's word is according to this Babylonian system. That's not my opinion. That's just the way it is. Jesus said he is seeking those who worship him in spirit and truth, not according to the traditions of man and according to the creeds of these ancient religions. So Revelation chapter 13, verse 8. All who dwell on the earth will worship him, whose names have not been written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. Thus the same forces at Babel, rebellion, unity through deception, and false worship, will resurface under the beast system of Revelation chapter 13. The nations once divided by God will again be united by Satan in rebellion against him, enforcing the mark of the beast through religion and political power. Yet amid the counterfeit unity, God's people, like Shem's faithful descendants, will remain separated and sanctified. Revelation chapter 18:4, it says, and I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins, and lest you receive of her plagues. Like Yeshua said, I have sheep that are not of this fold. I have sheep that are of the fold of the remnant, those who keep the commandments of God and have the faith of Jesus. Just like the preservation of the gospel through Shem's lineage, through the lineage of Shem. The covenant line continues. So from this division, God called one man, Abram, to form a nation that would bless all others. Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 3. Now the Lord said to Abram, get out of your country, from these eastward civilizations, from your family, from your father's house, to a land that I will show you. I will bless you, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. So in this eastward land, in the land of Uz, that Abraham was a part of, he was in the midst of these eastward religion, in the midst of these eastward ideologies. He was in the midst of these eastward families, in the midst of the Tower of Babel and Nimrod. Yahweh called Abraham. So as he called Noah. So again, you see the preservation of the gospel, the preservation of the covenant line. Thus, the story of Genesis 10 through 11 leads directly into God's plan of redemption, from scattered nations to a chosen seed through whom Messiah would come. So, and it's interesting how it's usually just a small remnant that he preserves it through. Like Yeshua said, broad is the way and wide is the way that leads to destruction, and there are many that find it, but narrow is the way and difficult is the way which leads to life, and there are few who find it. So though the world was divided, God's purpose was never lost. Every boundary drawn, every nation formed was part of his design to preserve truth until the appointed time. Isaiah chapter 45, verse 22. Look to me and be saved, all you ends of the earth, for I am Yahweh and there is no other. In the final days, when nations again unite in rebellion, Yahweh's people will unite in truth and spirit, like Yeshua said. He is seeking. The Father is seeking those who worship him in spirit and truth, not by force, but by faith. The confusion of Babel will be replaced by the clarity of the everlasting gospel, and the scattered children of Noah will be again gathered again, not into a tower, but into the kingdom of Christ. John chapter 10, verse 16. And other sheep I have which are not of this fold, them also I must bring, and they will hear my voice, and there will be one flock and one shepherd. Genesis chapter 10, verses 31 through 32. Exegesis.